Hey Homegoings fam, I'm Myra Flynn, creator of Homegoings, the Vermont public podcast featuring candid conversations about race with artists of color. The artists I interview are so prolific and so talented that for a second year in a row, we've staged a live performance with them for a heartfelt night of music, comedy, poetry, and movement. In the Homegoings tradition, we topped off the evening with a Q&A session, vulnerability personified. This is Homegoings. Welcome home. We're about to talk about Marissa Herrera, who flew here last night from Los Angeles, California. Marissa is a lot of things. She's an actress. She runs a nonprofit organization for other artists who are young so they can figure out how to be her. She's also somebody who is a Chicana indigenous woman, the first on Homegoings. And Marissa lost her mother last year. She was part of our episode called The Relief in Grief. And what was really interesting about interviewing Marissa was that her mother had her at 19 years old. And so they kind of had this interesting exchange where they couldn't quite figure out who the mother really was in their relationship. Art has certainly been a catalyst for her navigating that journey. And tonight, Marissa's going to be grieving for us. This is in honor of her mother, Rosie Herrera. Marissa Herrera.
Grief. To the east, memories rise with the sun, the sweet and the bitter. I hold space for them all. To the west, grief sets in my body, a heart that struggles to find its rhythm, literally and figuratively. I haven't caught my breath since you last took yours. To the north, I look up to my spirit guides and ancestors and realize that now includes you. To the south, I dig down deep into my anger. We still had so much more life to live. To the sky, I am in gratitude that we chose each other in this lifetime to learn to grow, forgive, and to love. To the earth, you've returned, ashes to ashes, to continue to nourish me as I ground myself in a life here without you. Continuing to cry, scream, and hurt, while simultaneously finding moments of joy, grace, and resilience. I am my mother's daughter. I dance in this space where love and grief coexist. Meet me there for one last dance together.
¿Dónde estás, mi amor? ¿Y dónde están mis sueños que brillaron esos días como una dulce canción? Pido al cielo cuando miro las nubes y recuerdo nuestros tiempos como una dulce canción. Lejos de ti, lejos de mí, no quiero vivir así. Lejos de ti, ¿dónde está tu piel? ¿Y dónde están tus ojos? Tus susurros que suenan como una dulce canción. Pido al cielo cuando miro a las nubes y recuerdo nuestros momentos como una dulce canción. Lejos de mí, lejos de ti, no quiero vivir así. Lejos de ti. Lejos de mí, lejos de ti, no quiero vivir así. Lejos de ti. Lejos de mí, lejos de ti, no quiero vivir así. Lejos de ti, no quiero vivir así. Lejos de ti.
I don't know how I do this job. I want to cry. Okay. It's time for the Q&A portion of the evening. Your name, where you're from, and what's your question?
Hi, I'm Colin Duclos. I live in Brookfield. And I know not all of you are from Vermont, but the BIPOC community is not a monolith. And I think it makes it challenging. Like, I love living here, but one of the things that I really don't like, and for my kids, is how incredibly white it is. And I would love to encourage more BIPOC people to come here. And it's a big question, I know, but what can be done that would make it a more inviting place? Any opinions are great.
I love that. The
Thank
people
you.
want to know. The
Yeah.
people want to know anything. Thank you so much. Thanks for asking. Yeah, so the question is, what could attract more Black, Indigenous people of color here? And I kind of want to ask someone who's not from here, because I think we have our script in a certain way, and I'm kind of just wondering if you have any thoughts, like you all have not spent a ton of time in Vermont. Maybe Marissa could start with you.
This is my first time visiting Vermont, and it was a very quick trip. I will say that I got in at midnight last night, and I will be gone at 3:00 tomorrow. And I want to come back. I think my experience, although limited, has been very welcoming. And to fly 3,000 miles and feel safe enough to share my grief and my love and my story on stage. I am a dancer first, but most of my work is as a director and choreographer and producer now. And I haven't danced in a long time. And my heart is so full right now with the love and the care that was with my fellow artists and in this room, and you don't get that everywhere. So I'm leaving inspired, with the hope of this community, that we have audience members that are asking, what can we do? Because you don't get that in a lot of communities. Even in liberal, West Coast communities, we don't get that. So I think continuing to ask those questions, continuing to be open, continuing to create these safe spaces for people to be authentic and share their authentic stories and to see themselves in this community in that way, that's how we move the needle.
People of color talk. Black people talk to other black people. There's opportunities here. There's a community investing in us here. Come, we can build something here, right? And to that end, I've talked to black people who live here, and that's not really what I hear. I don't hear that the black folks who live here are already being supported, right? I don't hear that the folks who have already been brave enough to make a life for themselves here have been supported, funded, respected in a way that makes them want to stay. So why would I move here if they are having a hard time here? You know what I'm saying? Money. Give people money and funding to be here, to build a life for themselves and their families, and you'll see a flourish in the community here.
Anyone from the fellow Vermont community care to answer this question?
So I'm not from Vermont, actually. I lived in Burlington for almost 5 years. And I think just to kind of double down on what was just said, but in an even more tangible way for folks who are in here, the sentiment is one thing, but supporting with your money, with your time is another. There are a number of wonderful businesses, restaurants, performers, black businesses, black performers, black businesses in Burlington, in Vermont, throughout this entire state. Sentiment is deeply important, but the next time you're thinking, okay, it's Friday night, I'm gonna order food for my family, go to Kismayo Kitchen, go to Harmony's, go to these, they're here, and we all have, a lot of us have access to the internet, to our phones. Just look one up. Instead of getting pizza, go somewhere that you haven't eaten before, support a community that you haven't before. When you're going to farmers markets, don't shop, don't consume in a comfortable way. Get out of your comfort zone. Be intentional about your choices. When folks are asking for financial support, for asking for that time support, it's not just a generalized ask. These businesses, these people, they're physically here already. They need that support, and all that support looks like is you making a different choice day to day and not being so comfortable in the way your life is currently. So just make different choices. That's just small choices, different choices, but intentional choices. So, yeah.
I love it. All right, anybody else want to step to the mic with another question?
My name is Emily Carley, and I live in central Vermont. I am a public school educator, and it's a big topic, and we have so much to do. We have so much work to do, so much good work to do, but I want to bring it down to the scale of being seen and included and heard in classrooms. And I'd like to just pose that as a question for public educators and those who care about public education. And I'd like to hear from you, please.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we're kind of asking, it's interesting. I love Vermonters because I do love this curiosity about like how to do better. Like you said, like that's not always the case, right? And also it's like, we don't know. Like sometimes I'm like, I don't know. But from a public education perspective, that's a really specific question I feel like we can answer. Is anybody feeling like taking that? Would you like to? Go for it.
Yeah, make sure that the inclusion feels authentic. So I teach music theory, and that has a very particular meaning in higher education about like who you're going to teach and who gets included, what's actually good music versus what's bad music. Like what I did today would not be considered good music to theorists 20 years ago, you know? But at some point, music theory professors realized that they were out of touch, and they started trying to get back in touch. And what they would do is they wouldn't tailor the theory. They would just try to find condescending examples of like black people doing something that fit the theory, right? When it's like, this is something that's not actually objective. This is something that's subjective, and the art that black people made should have been taught on their terms instead of the white racial frame that they're often taught. So like you'll find that with talking about the great empires of the world. We don't ever learn about African empires that are like within the realm, are in contact with the great empires that we do talk about, right? That are doing commerce and things like that. That's a very organic thing that can happen that just doesn't happen when we're talking about world history, right? There are tons of examples of not even just talking about black people, but just like calculus, talking about the innovations that come from the Indian subcontinent or from Iran, or, you know, like these are things that we just think of Leibniz and Newton or something, you know, like the whitest white men ever on the earth. But there were people all over the world that were simultaneously coming up with these theories, right? You know, a lot of the things that we kind of take for granted as being part of the history of the West, it's like, well, simultaneous to a lot of these advances, other cultures were doing this too. It wasn't a Western idea. So that's unfortunately how much work you'll have to do, but it needs to be woven in on the terms of the reality of what those cultures were doing. So.
Thanks for your question, and thank y'all for being here. I think when I think of that question, I feel like my immediate thought is how much learning I had to do outside of my formal education throughout elementary, middle school, and even by the time I got to college. The immediate example that popped to my mind hearing that question was like I remember in high school, we had a psychology class. It was like an early, just an intro to psychology. And it wasn't until really about a year ago I started tapping in more into existential philosophy and doing some learning on that myself, that I even found that there were black existential philosophers. Like they're just not part of the curriculum. And one thing I do in New York City right now is I teach stand-up classes, and even the curriculum that was provided to me, there's like a very small amount of black comedians included in that list. And just one thing that you can start doing is when you're building your curriculums, when you're building your schooling, like, are there examples that aren't on this list, like, that I can pull in? And that might take some extra work on your part, and far be it from me to ask a public school teacher to do more work than they already do. But when it comes to anything racial like that, unfortunately, that is more individualized work. But I think it's just asking yourself that question of, like, is there any way I can step out of what's been given to me and infuse more Black, brown folks into my learning, into my teachings, and things like that.
Yeah. It sounds like effort is the word.
Yeah, along those lines. My mom was an educator for 40 years, and it was always, there was never enough time. The reason she went into education was to teach art and culture and community, and there was no time when everything was about testing and standards. So it's about breaking the mold about what education should look like, number one. Number two, not guessing as a non-BIPOC person what the value and the importance is of our communities. And engaging in conversations with people that are already doing this work. There are lots of lists of books and resources and movies that didn't even exist 10 years ago that you can go and do the research to find out and engage in conversations with other BIPOC educators that are doing this work. What I will say is that it is a very fine line in putting the labor on the BIPOC community to do the teaching. It is not our job to come in and have to educate about the trauma of our communities too. And when you do engage in the conversation, pay us. I don't care if it's out of your pocket, y'all. Like, I know, as we put money into the things that are important for our young people, but if it means paying somebody for the hour of their time to be able to come and share their lived experience, then that is what we have to do. And not only that, it's not just about teaching the history and the trauma of our communities. We got to educate our communities about the joy. Right now, the theme for my nonprofit, we've worked through our trauma. We went through George Floyd. We went through COVID, all of these different things. We have now focused on joy being part of our resilience, because if in hard times, our communities come together and we celebrate through art, through music, through food, and coming together to uplift us. So that also has to be included in the curriculum as well.
Well, I can't thank you all enough for being here. I just wanted to ask one last question, and it's okay if the answer is like nothing. But, in the world of homegoings, I'm trying to have the podcast and the events and the TV part. I'm trying to create a whole ecosystem of safety, basically, so that we can all keep feeling humanized and seen. Is there anything that you got from either being a part of the episodes or tonight that you felt like you needed to get?
Freedom.
Healing and a new family.
All of you.
Visibility and affirmation.
Thank you. I think also just the power of vulnerability and connection, the huge and often underestimated power that comes with sharing your humanity with someone and being listened to and listening to other people. It's incredibly healing to be yourself and to be brave enough to be yourself.
Inspiration.
Please give it up for the artists from Homegoings 2024. Marissa Herrera, Kaya Morris, Ash Diggs, Saeed T. John Thomas Jr., Matthew Evan Taylor, Saeed needs a moment. Thanks so much for joining us. If you want to continue to be a part of the Homegoings family, stay in touch at homegoings.co and subscribe to the Homegoings podcast wherever you listen. Take good care.